Retail landlords are threatening their tenants. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. I've got my morning stein of coffee and I thought we'd start the day by having a look at an article shared to me by a viewer with regards to retail landlords being a little tough on some of their tenants. Now I can't say I'm surprised in the slightest. Let me know in the comments if you have had good experiences with any large format retail landlords. But what this tells me, my takeaway from this is there are probably some underlying fundamental issues that the retail landlords are facing. Maybe they're starting to get a bit worried. Maybe, well, the profit they will make as a business might suffer a bit. And that might be reflected in the share market and in the returns from some of these retail property trusts. We'll have to see, everyone. So let's have a look at this article. One of Australia's biggest shopping centre landlords has threatened to take action against shop owners who closed their doors to protect employees from the illness in an apparent breach of new rules protecting struggling retail tenants. I can't say I'm surprised. If you're if you sign a lease in one of these places, they're quite onerous. I remember because I changed from a commercial property to a retail property, even though I cut my rent in half, I had all these other, they wanted me to do this paperwork, get an accountant, a lawyer, and everyone to look at it. And I couldn't understand why. I'm going, guys, this is going, about 22 grand. I was at 48 before. Why do I need to do all this stuff? I realized it's because of the mum and dad effect and the current affair effect. All Westfields and the big retail places, putting the screws on the little guys. So then you have all this government intervention come in. And it's a pain in the ass. It would have cost me another 5 grand, which is a big chunk of money for me. I'm a small business person to spend on all these, professionals just to look at stuff and tell me stuff I can read. There you go, guys. But, more government's a solution to everyone's problems. The $5 billion Vicinity Centres, which manages 63 shopping centres, including Melbourne's Chadstone Shopping Centre and Chatsworth Chase in Sydney, wrote to a string of tenants in the past month to warn them against shutting their doors amid the pandemic. In a letter obtained by The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald, Vicinity National General Manager Matt Thompson told a small Victorian retailer that its decision to close its doors to protect employees against the virus had put the tenant in breach of its commercial obligations. And I would not be surprised if some of these big retailers will just throw money at it to create fear and intimidation of their tenants. I mean, that's what I've heard some really nasty stories. There was once we were working in doing a proposal for a shopping centre managers, and I remember they were sharing a coffee and explaining how they wanted to get rid of a particular tenant, a butcher who was doing a roaring trade, had a good business. So what they did is they hired some actors. To spin a story in the food court, because they knew the butcher would sit there, at his lunchtime and listen to everyone. They'd spin a story about a new expansion or a new chain coming in. And the butcher was irate, went to the managers going, I demand to get out of my rent. I'm not going to be here if this is happening. I've heard such and such. It's all a lie. And they said, oh, we'll do your deal and get you out. So, I mean, this is the world that you're dealing with here in retail, guys. I mean, it's all smoke and mirrors. Maybe it's just me being too bitter and old, everyone. Maybe that's it. I don't fall for all the glitz of the shopping centres anymore. I mean, when we go there now, we go to the kiddie sections, the kids have a play, and I'll probably eat a $1 coffee I brought from 7-Eleven. It shows you how hardcore we are with our retail shopping. But one thing, honestly, I think habits are going to change. I think this valuation is going to take a big hit because people are going to start going, well, why do I need to shop here if I can get it all online? Why do I need to go for the pain of parking, dealing with people, all this stuff I've done it for 6 months. I'll just keep going. What do you reckon? So, back to this. We understand your company's position, but are very disappointed to hear that company name has made the decision to close despite the measures that Vicinity has put in place, Mr. Thompson wrote. We do acknowledge that this decision was based on protecting the health and safety of your employees, but we have to acknowledge that your decision to close does represent a material breach in our commercial agreement, and we reserve our rights in this regard. So, here we go. I mean, they're doing that with intention. Could you, and maybe the lawyers, could you answer, well, will you indemnify me from any potential health risks or loss of income risks that I incur by opening during this pandemic? Could you do that? Sure, I'll open. You need to indemnify me. Take on all liability, because I'm depending on your ability to manage the safety of this environment. I'll manage in here, you manage out there. Indemnify me. That everyone coming in is going to be free from this illness. Put someone at my door with a thermometer. I wonder how that'd go down. Mr. Thompson added, we acknowledge the difficulty of the present situation and the fact that it is rapidly changing. The directive from the retail giant was received in the same week the National Cabinet met with the Shopping Centre Council of Australia and other retail stakeholders to nut out a new mandatory code of conduct covering small to medium business tenants. The code includes a memorandum on evictions and a freeze on rent increases for 6 months. But they're still reserving their rights, aren't they? They're still reserving their rights. I mean, yeah. It's funny. We've done a fair bit of retail work in these environments as architects, designing retail fit-outs for smaller tenants, and they are a mission to make any profit on. You know, a lot of people, I get the feeling, do it just as small operators. I mean, that was our problem. We were doing it with staff in an office, and I think people just do it for the glamour and the glitz. Look at these nice pictures, and that's not kind of, you know, doesn't excite me as much as others. The document, which was finalised last week and is being passed in state parliaments around the country, outlines landlords and retailers' obligations as the COVID-19 social distancing rules challenge operating conditions. Prime Minister Scott Morrison has said retailers and landlords need to share the pain as the social distancing rules put the brakes on discretionary spending and sap foot traffic from shopping centres. Vicinity Centres denies the company was operating against the spirit of the code. A spokesperson for the Melbourne-based company said the letter and similar letters sent to tenants didn't amount to a formal breach notice, but was a reminder of the lease obligations, or lease agreement obligations. Yeah, well, it wasn't a formal breach, but, you know, it's scaring them. It's done with intent. It is done with intent. Of course could you argue that it's their responsibility to provide a safe environment? How can they ensure that infected people aren't coming in? How can the retailer ensure that? And by that I mean the landlord. Other sources in the company said it was unlikely any action would be taken against tenants who kept their doors shut. The company has also committed not to evict retailers experiencing hardship under illness measures and social distancing restrictions in line with government rules and code of conduct. Of course not. Of course not, because then your occupancy rates will plummet and then the valuations of your buildings will fall. You'll lose money. We have said that we understand that some retailers made the decision to close as a result of COVID-19, and whilst we want them to reopen as soon as it is appropriate to do so, we have committed to not terminating a lease for retailers that may be experiencing hardship during this period. I mean, who thinks there's going to be any option of anyone else coming in to take a lease right now? They're going to be doing everything they can to keep people. I think there will be a change. I think we'll see drops in valuations of some of these centres after all of this. Maybe there'll be a bump. I mean, retail figures have gone up recently. But how much of that was to do with hoarding and toilet paper and people going crazy? What toys did you buy? How did you justify buying new toys? I got myself my bow and arrow behind me. I got the generator. I got a solar panel. you've got to take advantage of any situation to buy new camping toys. It's justified. It is understood vicinity management decided to send the letter to tenants after witnessing a number of large and smaller retailers closing their doors voluntarily in March, in a trend which was widespread across the retail sector. Centre Group, which is one of Vicinity's largest rivals and controls Westfield branded shopping centres around the country, also witnessed most tenants shutting doors in March. At the group's AGM in April, Chief Executive Peter Allen noted that 86% of tenants in its Westfield Mall portfolio were allowed to trade, but only 39% were open. But the trend now appears to be easing, a Vicinity spokesperson said. The Shopping Centre Council of Australia Executive Director Angus Nardi said that landlords were working hard to help tenants, but tenants also needed to do their bit. Tenants should honour the terms of their lease, he said. In a number of our centres, several retailers, both large and small, national brands and dining operators who voluntarily closed their doors, are now reopening their stores. And there are more stores reopening now than choosing to close, he said. The Victorian government will rush through urgent legislation on Thursday that formalises the Code of Conduct. A government spokesperson said the government was urging landlords and tenants to pay attention to the spirit of the document. The spirit of the code is that parties work together to protect small business, jobs, and the economy, the spokesperson said. Any tenant who has a dispute that they cannot resolve with their landlord should contact the Victorian Small Business Commission, which provides advice to help resolve disputes and a mediation service. Here we go, guys. What do you think about the state intervention? I mean, the landlord is frankly shooting themselves in the foot. This will damage any goodwill they have with their tenants. And they're going to be fighting to get tenants if we go in a prolonged recession. But then again, being in a big business like that, being a bureaucrat in one of those big businesses, you may not appreciate the challenges of the smaller end of town. You may never really had the same level of stress or responsibility. Getting that report in, or boss gets angry, it's not the same as, okay, mortgage or food. Anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you all for watching, and if you're a fan and want to support us, there are a few ways you can. You can share the content, help the channel grow. You can support us financially by joining the channel on YouTube or via Patreon. You can use our affiliate links at Amazon or eBay, or Independent Reserve and Kucoin for the crypto traders. We accept gold using Gold Pass from Perth Mint. You can buy a merch from Teespring or HeiseSays blog. And finally, PayPal if you want to support us that way. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. And watch out for angry landlords. Take care.